Good morning, everyone. Yes, welcome to day 2 of Tableau conference. So data, of course, is increasing in the world, and organizations are wanting to take advantage of that data to become more data-driven. It will make their organizations work more effectively, and they want all of their employees to be able to help them work with data. Have you, in particular, wondered about what role you should play in your organization as an individual with respect to working with data? You also might be a person wondering about how all the different roles in your organization should work together to make your organization more data-driven. I'm Jock McKinley. I'm the Vice President of Research and Design at Tableau. And today I'm going to talk about 4 key roles for visual analysis. This talk is based upon my expertise as a research scientist. I'm an expert in both data visualization and human-computer interaction. And it's also based on lots of conversations I've had with customers since I joined Tableau in 2004 out of the research world. Now, my goal today is to help you both triangulate the particular role that you might have with respect to working with data, and also give you a framework in which to think about how the different roles in your organization can work to make your organization more effective at working with data. And I'm going to start by talking about classic business intelligence, which was really a huge innovation a couple of decades ago when IT departments formed and started collecting data out of the organization, out of the operational databases, and creating a data warehouse. That the idea was to make the organization more intelligent at working with data. That work led to 3 of the key roles I'm going to talk about today. They are still completely valid roles about making organizations more data-driven. The first role is the analyst role. These are people at the time in classic business intelligence in IT or high in the organization that were typically answering questions for C-level people in the organization from that data warehouse, from the data that they now had, and they could answer these questions more effectively. So an analyst is, the core about an analyst is to do work with data and answer questions for other people. The second role is the author role. So IT departments started generating reports that they would send out to the organization, and that led to the third role that I'm going to talk about today, which is the consumer role. The other people in the organization that took those reports to use as part of their work. And so these are the 3 key roles of visual analysis, and I'll get to the 4th one in a moment. Now, what was interesting about classic business intelligence was that, this is informal, but most of the work, actual data work that was going on in the organization was done up in IT. Although there were many, many more consumers in the organization, they had trouble actually getting their work done. And one of the key reasons is that it's actually pretty hard if you're authoring a report for other people to put in that report everything that a person might need. So for example, you might have a particular report that was targeted at some part of the organization, and it might have actually taken a 6-month project from the IT to figure out what that report would be and put it in it. And now you're a consumer looking at that report, and it might not contain everything you need to do your job. And so then what you would do is you'd send off a change request to IT. You wouldn't actually know who the author was, but you send off a change request. It would get to the author. The author might or might not address it. And if they do, then they might modify the report. And a couple of weeks later, if you were lucky, the report would get updated. And by then, of course, the question you had, the problem you were working on, might have completely changed. Now, it might have been perfectly fine. Business intelligence absolutely had huge impact on the world. But then if we progress forward a couple of decades, the world has changed. Data is now raining down on all of us from the cloud. And I use the metaphor literally. And this data is totally valuable to all of our organizations, to all of us in terms of we're doing the work. And the poor analysts and authors in IT who are still serving a really valuable function are literally overwhelmed. And this is why companies want all of their employees to be able to work with data. They need the help of everyone in the organization to deal with the massive amounts of data that is available today. So in 2004, when I joined Tableau, Tableau was just embarking on showing the world that there is another role, the fourth role, that I'm going to call, for this talk, the Vizzer role. As I told you, I'm an expert on data visualization. Humans have very powerful visual systems. The term Vizzer comes from our visual systems allow all of us to be able to work effectively with data. And so rather than you having to send a request off to IT and get an updated report, Vizzers are people answering their own questions from data. That distinguishes them from consumers, which is a more passive role, but Vizzers are in an active question-answering relationship for them. Now, Tableau in particular showed the world that by developing easy-to-use software, I mean, I'll freely admit it could be easier, and we're working on making it easier, but easy enough to use that a large number of consumers who had questions with data no longer had to go back to IT to answer some of their questions. They could do their data work themselves. They could they are dealing with this huge rain of data coming out of the cloud on top of that, on top of them. Now, the interesting thing is, we've also, by the result of having easy-to-use software, is we've actually empowered some people to actually do the analyst role. The analyst role is answering questions for other people. Happens all the time. You might be sort of the data geek in your group, and people come and ask you questions, and you're now in an analyst role, answering the questions for people. And in particular, a key activity of analysts beyond just doing the vizzing, answering the question, is to explain the findings, whatever they have found out about their data, to other people. For one thing, they were often asked, but even if you found out something on your own, almost always you're going to need to tell other people in your organization about that. And so to do that, the effective way to do that is to tell stories about, because humans we're built for consuming information via stories. And I have this picture. I went into visit the day on Tableau Public and just marched myself back the last few days and found this particular viz that I think really gives you a sense of what storytelling. This is pretty sophisticated visual effects, but the person here is trying to tell you that in Phoenix it gets really, really hot. You can fry an egg on many, many days in Phoenix. And so the data confirms that. It's a simple finding. We already knew this, but nevertheless, you can see how effective storytelling can be very effective for communicating data inside your organization, making your organization more effective at working with data. And then also, of course, the authoring function has been pulled down into the rest of the organization out of IT. This, by the way, is very good for IT, right? The IT is a small group that needs to work on the most critical problems for the company. And so they would love it if people could self-service, both answer questions, but also generate little applications that they can give to their work colleagues to get their work done. And again, on Tableau Public, I found this particular view. This, of course, is about the population distributions in the United States. It's hard to see here, but actually broken down by congressional districts of the percentage of Puerto Ricans in those districts. And the person who authored this view, I don't actually know who the person was individually, but generated the view very quickly after the hurricane in Puerto Rico to create a little application that people could look at to try and figure out how they could work with is this a congressional district with a lot of Puerto Ricans? Can we team up with them and help do relief aid for Puerto Rico? So this is a simple app, but authors are generating not just reports. Nowadays, they're also generating little workflows, little applications for people to work with data. Now, I'm focusing in this talk on the 4 key roles of visual analysis. There are, of course, more roles in your organization. This is a diagram that we have that it sort of describes the entire span of work from data on the left to telling stories on the right. And as you can see, there's a lot of different parts of the process, from connecting the data, cleaning, transforming. There are huge data performance issues when the data gets large, and since there's data raining down from the clouds, data is getting large. Authoring, you have to do modeling on and on like that all the way through to storytelling. And so I just want to acknowledge that there are experts in the company, typically in IT, that are essentially data stewards. Their expertise is in the area of building data warehouses and other data sources. One type, C-level executives, designers. There's definitely, you might want a team. The one point of putting up this list is just to say, you're not in it alone. There's a collaboration going on here. And you might, for really effective storytelling, you might want to team up with a designer. There's admins. There's a whole bunch of other roles as well that are all in this really large ecosystem for working with data. Now, I wanted to take just a sample of the room at this moment about what do you think your primary role is with respect to working with data. Actually, I'd be curious before that, how many people are here at the Tableau conference for the first time? Okay, it's actually a fair amount of room. It'd be very interesting to see. So how many of you think your primary role in your organization is a consumer role? Wow, okay, we're just very few people. How many think that you're a Vizzer, answering your own questions? Okay, that was about less than a third, but close to a third. Analyst? And that's again a third. And author. This is the first time I've done this, so this data to me is actually very interesting. So slightly less on the authoring. It's obviously a skilled role, and I'm not surprised there are a lot of authors at this conference. But I'm now going. What my goal for the remainder of the talk is to sort of talk about these roles and get us to understand what they are. And so you can both decide what role you want to have and also understand how your particular organization is full of people. I now have some sense of how this room is full with people, and I'm going to extrapolate a little bit to the conference about that. But the way I was going to do that first is I was going to show you some videotape we collected that Emilie Martin has given me permission to play this piece of video for you. This video, so first let me describe Emilie. She's a financial assistant at First Tech Credit Union. She supports the financial advisor in a particular office, is very data-oriented. She keeps Mike informed. She helps customers get the right services and generates leads for the local branch. So one of the things that we do at Tableau is we have a user research team that is very skilled at triangulating data, both quantitative and qualitative data, including survey data, together, also collecting actual video of talking to various customers to try and understand how people are working with that data, what the different roles are in the organization. And they gave a talk, the two user researchers that talked to Emilie, they gave a talk, and I saw this, and it seemed to be very interesting with respect to these 4 roles. And so I'm going to play the video for you, and then we're going to have a short conversation about what role is Emilie actually playing in her organization? Just to sort of try and lock down for you, this is the way adults learn, is to try and solve problems themselves. So let me fire up the video for you. You should be able to hear it. We did a sound test earlier.
Well, one of the things, so Tableau, I use that most commonly to track referrals back and forth from ISD to the branch and from the branch to ISD. I track the ratios of branch referrals to ISD referrals because, just going by the straight number of ISD referrals is a little bit misleading when you've got, a large branch with 15, 20 employees and things like that, and a lot of foot traffic saying, that one set of I like my data to be relevant and not just reactionary. Mm-hmm. So if you've got one office that's got 20 referrals and you've got one office that's got 3 referrals, it's very easy to say, oh, well, that 20 referral office, they're killing it. Well, they are, but that's, 20 referrals against a sea of 300 cases. And if the office that does 3 is against a sea of 10 cases, you just got to make sure that that's all relevant and leveraged in the appropriate way. There was always well, you need to make sure that you're doing this, but there was no number attached to it. There was no what well looked like. So I just determined that as long as there was a good ratio of give and take, that was really a good metric and a good way to make sure that we're meeting that metric. It's all manual.
Do you ever edit Tableau dashboards, or do you only consume the ones others have produced?
Only consume.
Okay.
I have a tech background, and I really enjoy things like that, so I know better than to even try to play with things, because once I start, I will wind up doing pretty irreparable damage.
Okay.
It's one of those things where if you can't, if you know you're going to play with the toy, you just leave it. Just don't even touch it. So I just use it from a consumer perspective for my reporting. This is what I'm talking about. This is leads from ISD.
When you come to this dashboard, what kind of questions are you trying to answer? What would be your typical flow?
Okay, so we'll just go with us, Mike.
Okay.
That's my office. We've got 20, so that's pretty good because we're really small, and so 20 is not bad. These are this is what we have sent over, and then what I'll do is then I will go to leads to ISD. And this is where I work the ratio. All right, so this is our branch. So with 20 from us and 24 from them, this means that we are essentially running at a 1-to-1. So for every referral that the branch sends us, we send one back. That's a good ratio. The company average is 4 branch referrals to 1 ISD referral, and we're running about 1-to-1, and that's the metric that I use. And usually I don't pull all of the branches, but I will pull the top 10 advisors, and I just want to make sure that we are at least keeping pace with, the best producers within the company. I'm not specifically looking for us to be the best, although that would be lovely, but really, I really just want to make sure we're doing our job. So Fort Collins right here says 105. Here's a good example, because this is one of the top producers for sure. And so 105 from the branch and 27 from investment. So, and they're a top producer. They've got a great relationship with their branch, and that's a 6-to-1 branch to ISD ratio, and there's nothing wrong with that ratio. So as long as we're keeping pace with that, I'm very happy.
Are you happy with the way these dashboards present this information, or is there anything that you would like to see differently?
No, it's full of charts and pretty numbers and easy to disseminate information. I'm generally pretty happy with that.
Okay.
I like
is there
this,
any information?
and I like this. I actually love the fact that it's even broken down by products, because when I further refine my ratios, I remove anything from that's not branch related, so home equity, home loans, insurance. These are all outside partners, well, not outside, but these aren't in the branch itself. And so I actually can say, all right, to the branch, I've given this. From outside the branch, I've given this. Do a couple different ratios, and it's just really good to make sure that we are doing our jobs.
So earlier you were talking about those 2 dashboards. So you looked at the first dashboard to look at how many leads you sent over, and then you go to a different dashboard to look up how many leads have been sent to your branch, right?
Yep.
And you're calculating the ratio. Are you just kind of roughing it out in your head?
Oh no, I calculate it. I actually pull out a calculator.
And do you write it down somewhere?
I do. I keep a spreadsheet in a Word document. I keep an Excel spreadsheet I turn an Excel spreadsheet into a graph that I keep in a Word document.
Oh. So you said that you also pull like the top 10 advisors and you see if you're keeping pace with them. Do you actually calculate that and store that as well?
I do.
Awesome. Would you mind showing us that spreadsheet?
I can show you one of the older ones. I actually just lost all of my documents the other day. And so now we had to create a separate folder, so we're trying to get it all back.
Would it be useful to you if that ratio was directly shown in a dashboard?
I don't know if it would. I don't mind doing the work, and it was only something that was relevant to us. Because we are so small, although it was actually pretty cool because Mike still wound up being in the top 10. So this is one of the old ones. So this is the blue is the advisor leads to the credit union. Red are the advisors leads to the branch. And then green is the branch leads to the advisor. So the average ratio is 2.51 to 1 branch leads to ISD leads for all ISD leads to the credit union. The average ratio is 3.9 to 1 branch leads to ISD leads for ISD leads to branch only. And then our ratios were 1.3 to 1 and 1.6 to 1.
Could you show us the actual data, like the spreadsheet that you used for this? I'm just curious how you set up your data. Every month you go in and you look at those dashboards and you just go in and type it in. Okay, awesome. Thank you so much.
And then I pull up a calculator to do my division, or I'll actually go in and like, on some of the newer ones, I've actually just run the numbers in the spreadsheet.
Okay, good. Okay, so now we'll try it. The room's a little big, but the number of people here should work. What do you think? Is Emilie a consumer, a Vizzer, an analyst, or an author? Anyone have an opinion? Everything? Consumer/analyst. Yes. So why do you say that? Why did you say so? Why is she not a Vizzer? She's repeating work. Yeah. So if she were answering a new question, then she would fit my definition of a Vizzer. A Vizzer is a person who's trying to answer their own question, working with data. She's definitely a consumer. She calls herself a consumer. But she's also an analyst because she's working for Mike, and she's actually working for an entire branch. And so the work that she's repeating here is essentially monitoring how they're doing with respect to the balance between the leads and the referrals that are coming into the branch. Anybody disagree? What? The specific data is new data, absolutely. And one of the things I really find interesting about this video is that she, right now, at the time that we took this video, was perfectly fine with doing that manual work of putting it in, in Excel and then generating the little report herself. It would be actually, already would be easy for her to, if she has the right permission access to the dashboard, to extend it, to include that once, and then she'd never have to do that manual work again. But she is not inclined to go do that. But she obviously has all the skills for it. She is actually, in a sense, authoring. She's authoring that little spreadsheet in Excel. So it's pretty interesting. Like when this was shown at Tableau, we tend to think at Tableau in development, which is where I am, we tend to think in terms of technologies. And so for people inside of Tableau, it's literally opening up the drag and drop experience in the browser or going to desktop and doing it that people call authoring. But she's actually, I think, authoring. I think we're on the right track. She's doing authoring work. Without just using, consuming a lot and then doing some authoring as well. So yeah, I find it very interesting. So the key thing is to look back at what the actual roles of what people are actually doing understand what kind of data work is going on in your organization. And of course, we'd love to empower her, right? She shouldn't have to do that manual work all the time. So are there ways that we can increase the value of that? Now what I'm going to do for the remainder of my talk is sort of dive in a little deeper on these 4 roles, both for yourselves and also for your organizations in terms of trying to understand how these roles manifest in different organizations. I'm going to start with the consumer role. So the first thing to understand is that there are people in your organizations who will not engage with data. They aren't even really consumers of data well. I think the number of those people is decreasing, but it is but in any given organization over time, the number of people is decreasing. But it is absolutely true that there are people, for whatever reason, now we haven't studied this at all, but some people just didn't have the proper education in school. They didn't read the Freakonomics podcasts and that sort of thing. But they just are data phobic or just not interested, and they won't engage. More and more people, however, are consuming data in their organizations. And here's the other interesting fact. So when I asked you all how many of you were consumers, only a couple of hands went up. But the reality of it is, we're all data consumers most of the time. It's only when we start actually answering our own questions, answering questions for others, or authoring things for others that we leave the role of being a consumer. And we consume data all different ways, by email, company portals, reports. There's still valuable reports coming out of the organization that we use, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. One of the interesting things is, of course, I just said there's more and more data in the world, and one of the troubles we have as consumers is finding the right data to consume. So I put the little picture up there of all those reports. This was true even in classic business intelligence. Which report should I use at this particular time? Can I find the right report? And since nowadays it's getting easier and easier to develop data sources and also Tableau workbooks or whatever, one of the big challenges in organization is to help consumers get to the right data that they need to have. And so we need to work on that problem. The other interesting thing about consumers is that mobile phones are actually, well, first of all, mobile phones are increasingly used, or mobile devices, in an organization. And they're really a good way to consume data. Many companies, I've talked to a lot of customers, will give employees iPads in particular, one type or another. So you'll have inventory control iPads for that, which is all about data. You'll have salespeople going and visiting customers with data about that customer on an iPad that they want to share with the customer. That's frankly actually storytelling, but of a particular kind. And then also, we're all carrying around smartphones now, so companies are investing in bring your own device technologies. And so it is the core technology of today for consumers of data, which is actually all of us. So when you're spending your time consuming data, you're doing on it. Now, the interesting thing is, you will see consumers, sometimes when you're consuming data, there will be an extended workflow that you'll go through. So there's a lot of work that can actually happen. Like, for example, a salesperson might need to drill their interactive report down to their particular region. So they're going to do filtering. I think that we hit the right thing here, which is if that's routinized workflow, then they're not actually answering question. They're really just doing their consumption, but they have to use the interactive device about that. And the key thing there, which I'll talk when I get to authors, is authors can help that by authoring the appropriate workflows for them to get their work done. Now, what I want to do is, specifically on consumers, is to give you a demo of a new product that we're working on that's specifically for mobile devices. And I have my little iPhone 5 here. And did I switch to the right place? There it is. So if I get in here, that's my family. So here, this is a product that we're working on. It's being demoed, and they gave me, the team working on this gave me permission to show this to you as well. I'm not an expert at this. But this is a product for collecting what the old business intelligence folks called KPIs, key performance indicators, numbers. So what you have here is a bunch of different numbers, and there's a simple authoring UI that you can say, please put this particular number on my mobile phone, and then at any particular moment you can flip it up and ask for it. And the visual design of it, as you can see, is the actual number is shown. So at the top here is mobile events logged, and right now it's 77.1 thousand. And then the red is indicating that number just dropped. And so the key thing about KPIs, I have to be careful. If I turn it the other way, it flashes. The key thing that this consumption technology is for is for monitoring things that are going on. And the person, the software, and also the person who's working on here has identified that you're probably, for this particular task, interested in trends. So we have a line that we in the trade call a spark line for being able to see. You can see it dropped right at the end. And then if I tap on it, then I get a slightly larger view, where I can now start maybe answering questions. So one of the things I can do here is I can go back into the past and look at the particular values for different parts. Down at the bottom here, you can see that somebody made the call, an author, I would say, that for this particular number, mobile events logged, I might be interested in seeing it broken down by the type of the technology. So you can see here iOS and Android, and I might be really interested in seeing that specifically, and as I scroll through, the bar chart's updating. So this is essentially a consumption technology, but the point I want to make is when you look at this, particularly with a bright red thing going down there, you might go, oh my God, what's going on? And it might not be like the author here decided that I wanted to see it by device platform, but that might not explain why it's dropping. And in which case, I might want to go back and look at the data. At that moment where you go, oh, you're changing from a consumer into a Vizzer at that moment. You're incented to wanting to answer questions with data. And so that brings me to my next slide. This transition's not working as well as I hoped, but we'll get there. Okay. So now I want to talk about Vizzers for a moment. Good, we're in time. There'll be a little time for questions at the end. So consumers become Vizzers when they have questions. There are a wide range of questions out there. So I actually believe there were always Vizzers. People answering questions off the reports they were getting, new questions, not ones that either they'd ever had before or the author ever thought they would have before, but they could literally answer questions right off there. The most common question is a simple fact question. I just want to know, I want to get out of this report for whatever reason, some number or some piece of information of one type or another. There are other questions, however, that require significant analytical steps to be able to answer. And the hardest ones of those, which I highlight here on the slide, are questions that involve multiple data sources. And as I said, data's raining out of the clouds, and data's coming now from multiple data sources, and often you have questions that require that. I was talking to somebody yesterday on a conversation about social media data. Lots of companies are interested in their data and how it relates to social media data. So now you have data from multiple sources that you need to combine together. Now the interesting thing is, I might be on my phone using a little app, consuming data. When I get a question that's more than a simple fact question I can answer, I'm incented at that point. I will go off and find a larger device to do my data work. It's just what people do. And so And frankly, as an expert in visualization, I'll tell you, you do need that larger visual field. Data, particularly for extended steps or complex data, the increased visual field of your data is absolutely essential. You might need multiple view displays to be able to combine data together, or understand data from multiple sources. So there's a range of sophistication here also. So sometimes you'll have a question that just occurred to you for other reasons, and then you're going to need to go off and find the data source, which can be hard, but you're going to find data source to answer your questions. Most of the time, people move from consumer to Vizzer because they started with some view that they were consuming already. That's the easier case. The harder case is to start just with the data source in and of itself, because you might have to orient yourself to the data source. Now, right now at Tableau, we're very interested in natural language processing, both for consumers. Humans, in addition to having powerful visual systems, also we talk to each other all the time. So natural language is a great technology, natural language processing, to help consumers for simple fact questions in particular, but also for conversations. If you think about the analytical steps you're going through, you're literally having a conversation with the computer about trying to answer your questions. And so we think natural language processing can help with that as well. So it's also a significant technology for Vizzers as well as consumers. Now, the last point here is pretty interesting. Some people, although they're consumers, don't really want to be Vizzers. So they won't answer their questions for themselves. They'll ask somebody else to answer the question for them. Not everyone will Viz. In fact, lots of people won't. They might be really busy with their job. They might not be inclined to do it. They'll ask the questions. Other people will answer the questions for them, because there are people who love to do that. So that's the Vizzers. Now the analysts. So explaining findings effectively typically requires storytelling. And the reason for that, I already said earlier in the talk, is humans consume information most really effectively when it's told to them in a story. And in this case, what I mean is a story that's visual, not just a narrative arc. But for analysts in particular, what they're trying to do is they're trying to explain their finding to the people in their organization. And so the narrative arc of storytelling here is literally the logical steps, one after another, of how you go from the source data to the insight through filtering, sorting, various operations like that. And so the analysts are very skilled in particular at that logical arc, and they might have to reach out to designers or other people to really make a compelling description of their finding for other people. So so today, the range of people who are doing the analyst function has expanded from very skilled people in IT all the way down to very, very novice people in the organizations. And at the top end, the term that's being talked about now for people who are very skilled are data scientists. These are typically people that are trained in statistics. They often program. They often have database skills, including architecture skills. Nowadays, students are learning about machine learning, which is another way to do programming. So at the top end is data scientists. But analysts are not, the analyst role goes all the way down to essentially people that don't have any of that training at all. But they are trying to answer questions for other people, like their boss. And the interesting thing about, and we'll get to this in a moment, this is a transition to author, data scientists in particular also come up with statistical models and machine learning algorithms that can be used for, for authoring applications. So that brings me to my final slide here, which is authors. So in your organization, a key role is the author role. Because if you think about it, the authors are the ones who are more likely than anyone else to make the consumers and the visitors successful. And so you should invest in them, and they're hugely valuable. So they're going to generate the views that consumers are using, and they're going to anticipate the questions that those consumers will have, which turns them into Vizzers. So, and you want the appropriate workflow here. Now, the interesting thing is that it's slightly an artificial separation between analysts and authors, but not really. But when you look at their work, there is an overlap. Like, there's a workflow in an application, and there's a logical sequence in a story. And so for us, who are building technology, the features we develop support both of those. And so we're trying to support both storytelling and the workflows that authors are generating that help consumers and visitors do their work as well. And the key thing is to help them understand, what kind of questions will be asked commonly and make that really easy. Like, you only should open up a viz and start dragging and dropping using Tableau. Occasionally, ideally, the author should have made the questions right there in the dashboard and answerable for yourselves. Now, I told you back in the old days at Classic Business Intelligence, there might be a 6-month IT project to build an appropriate report. It's getting easier because the reports now that are generated, or the work applications are generated, are highly interactive. So you can actually, so the footprint of a specific authoring effort is expanded because people can then use the interactivity to adapt whatever they're getting from the author to their specific part of it. And the focus, as I said, is on workflow. And it's here where statistical models and machine learning algorithms can be really effective. And in particular, it can take a long time to author something that involves a machine learning algorithm, but once the algorithm is implemented, it can run real time in that little application and support the work. So there's a difference between the authoring of these models or algorithms and the actual use of them in application, which makes them really good for consumption because then they can run quickly on mobile devices. So, yeah, I said there'd be time for questions, and I'm at my last slide. So the 4 key roles of visual analysis are analyst, author, Vizzer, and consumer. Analysts focus a lot on explaining their findings via storytelling. Authors generate applications which has workflows for people to work through. I really appreciate your attention, and now I open the floor to questions. Thank you. Yeah.
Thinking about these different roles within an organization, if you're building out an analytics team, how important is it to start to put people in roles as opposed to just explain that these are 4 types of activities that a team might be involved in, knowing that people are moving around between those roles?
Yeah. The question was, how important is to put people in the roles versus understanding that people move around? So my opinion is it's much more important to understand that people move around, but of course there is this reality of how you invest in the technology. So, like, for example, a Tableau desktop costs a lot more than a subscription to a Tableau server for an interactor role, that sort of thing. It's when you invest that it matters what you think a person is doing. And I would say that the key part about that is to understand that people shift around. And so one of the reasons we're moving to subscription pricing at Tableau is because it then gets to be a lot easier for an organization to make adjustments on exactly what their investments are with respect to what they're doing, what their employees are doing. In other words, what I see from having talked to many customers for 13 years is that every company, every organization is on a journey with respect to getting more sophisticated at doing data-driven decision-making. And where you are right now in the exact mix of what you have is going to evolve. And so my recommendation for both investment and just in general is to know that you're on an evolutionary path and plan for it. And that's actually the reason why I put this talk together, is that I wanted you to get a sense of not just, should be, I'm hoping you'll be able to go back and sort of, my initial desire was to have really concrete ways to measure where you are in your organization, but we frankly haven't done enough user research to give you proper tools. We're working on that. Couple years, I'll come back and try and do that. But you can go informally yourself. You know your organization really well. And then remember that it's not just where you are today, but you're evolving going forward. And you really want to allow people to be able to move if they want, if it's appropriate for them to move. So, great question. Yes. So the question is with self-service becoming a bigger thing, would I change these definitions? No, these are, I think, accurate definitions. Even in self-service, some of our customers are very long on their self-service journey. There are also, so she asked about a BI admin and other roles. I was just focusing on sort of the analytics part of these roles. Those roles also exist in the organization. I didn't want to make this talk too complicated by talking about, and frankly, different companies make different choices for, like, the reality of it is that, you know, there are a huge range of companies out there. Like, for example, a consultancy, particularly a data-oriented consultancy, has actually a lot of analysts in it. So the ratio there would be much higher than you would have in other organizations, which might be, you know, have a lot of line people that are mostly consuming data for their job. And so, and there are other roles as well. So some companies deal with really large data, need a data from lots of really big sources, need a lot of data stewards, that sort of thing. It's really like, I'm trying to give you knowledge to go back to your organization and try and figure out where you are right now. Good, thanks. Yeah. Yeah.
Is that a good thing? Is that where you want to be? Or do you want to have defined roles and responsibilities and segment it out?
So the question is it desirable for all of them to combine together or segment them out? The reality of it is it's like impossible to get enough people that can do all three roles. It's essentially, you take that plus some other things, and you have a data scientist. Every trained data scientist with some experience on the planet is instantly hireable, and it's impossible to find enough data scientists for any organization from Google on down. And so, the other thing is there is a huge value in diversity and inclusion. So it is actually, what you really want to do is empower teams of people to work together. Because for one thing, you know, the reason why I drew consumers as this big swath is there's lots of different parts of your organization, so you really want to bring those people together. And some of them will be, you know, more data savvy than others, but it is that team, it's that team collaboration that I think you really want to achieve. And yes, you will have a few unicorn data scientists, absolutely have them. Make sure they work on the most important problems for your company. But data's raining down everywhere, so you want every employee to be able to do that. That's my opinion. So, yeah. Well, so Vizzer, so remember when I drew the arc from consumer up, including Vizzer, that is, I actually believe that the Vizzer, well, actually, beyond believe, when I joined Tableau in 2004, we didn't know how many people in an organization could actually answer their own questions. Turns out to be a lot of people. So Vizzers are more sophisticated. Well, there are consumers that are not going to be able to answer their own questions, but there's a lot of people in your organization that can. So the resource bottlenecks of the skills involved for analysts and author are not going away, but you can with training, with ease of use tools, with really good authoring, you can encourage more and more of the people in your organization to at least answer their own questions. And then the point of the beginning of the talk is some of them will answer questions for others, and some of them will start authoring things for other people. And that relieves that resource constraint at the top. So I think we've covered it all. Have a good rest of your conference, and thank you very much.